My name is Margaret Evans, but everyone in my family calls me Grandma Maggie. I'm 73 years old, and I've lived a long life filled with quiet routines, Sunday church, garden tomatoes, and the comforting presence of my family. I've always been the one people turn to for advice, the one who bakes the pies at Thanksgiving, the one who tells old stories on the porch swing. I've seen plenty in my years: wars, deaths, love, heartbreak, betrayal. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened last November. It was supposed to be just another cozy family dinner. A Sunday evening, as it had been for over 20 years now. All of us, my children, their spouses, and my 4 grandchildren, gathered around the long oak table in my dining room, the scent of pot roast and rosemary bread thick in the air. But that night everything changed. That night my sweet, quiet 12-year-old grandson Oliver looked me dead in the eyes and said something that still chills me to the bone. "Grandma, you need to go. Now." First I laughed, thought he was playing some kind of prank. But then he gripped my wrist tighter than a child ever had before. Not to hurt, but like he was begging me. "Please," he whispered this time, his voice cracking. "Just trust me. Let me back up a little. You need to know who we are before this makes sense, before you feel what I felt. Before you understand why I ran from my own home." Heart pounding, purse half zipped, not even grabbing my coat. My daughter Caroline is my oldest. A strong woman, fierce, a little high-strung. She married David, an insurance broker, quiet but thoughtful. They had Oliver and his older sister Hannah. Then there's my son Michael, divorced twice, charming, a little reckless. His new girlfriend Lacey had just started joining us for dinners. Young, pretty. Something in her eyes always made me unsettled. But I never said anything. I never wanted to be that mother-in-law. We were all at the table that night, the fireplace glowing behind us, shadows dancing on the walls. Everyone was laughing while trying to. Conversation felt off. Caroline was nervously tapping her fork against her plate. David kept glancing at his phone. Hannah hadn't said a word, and Michael, he looked pale, sweaty. And Lacey, sweet, always smiling Lacey, sat there unusually quiet, her eyes flicking from one person to the next like she was watching something unfold. That's when I felt it. A heaviness in my chest. Like the air in the room had changed. Something wasn't right. I was just about to ask if someone wanted dessert when Oliver, my shy, bookish, stargazing Oliver, stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly across the floor. "Grandma," he said, voice urgent. "You need to go." I blinked. Everyone turned toward him. Caroline's fork froze midair. "What are you talking about, sweetie?" I asked, trying to smile. His eyes were wide, terrified. "Please, just leave. Right now. You have to trust me. Go out the back door. Don't say anything else. Don't look at anyone. Just go." No one moved. "Oliver," David said sharply, "sit down. What are you doing?" But the boy didn't sit. He turned to me again. "Grandma, please." And somehow, in that moment I knew. I knew with every fiber of my being this wasn't a game. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't some silly misunderstanding. Something was very, very wrong. My heart pounded in my ears. My hands were shaking under the table. I glanced around. Michael's jaw was clenched. Caroline had gone pale. Lacey was staring at Oliver with a strange intensity. Not anger. Not surprise. Just calculation. I pushed my chair back slowly. "Well," I said, my voice a bit too high, "I forgot to feed the cat. I'll be right back." There was no cat. I grabbed my purse, slid out of the dining room. My legs felt like they were made of lead. Every step felt like it echoed through the house. I heard footsteps behind me, soft ones. I almost turned, but Oliver's voice replayed in my head. "Don't look at anyone. Just go." I opened the back door. The cold hit me hard. I stepped out into the night air, my breath fogging, and closed the door as quietly as I could. And I ran. I didn't stop running until I was 3 houses down, standing on Mrs. Darnell's porch, trembling. She wasn't home, visiting her sister in Florida, but I still had her spare key. I let myself in and locked the door behind me. And then I waited. Called no one. I didn't know who I could trust. Hours passed. I turned off all the lights. Sat curled on her sofa, every creak of the house making me flinch. What had just happened? Why had Oliver, sweet Oliver, told me to run? Why had he looked so scared? At 11:37 p.m. my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You were right to leave. Stay gone. They're watching. My heart dropped. My fingers trembled. I stared at the screen, disbelief choking me. And then, a second message. Don't go back. Not yet. They planned it tonight. But he saved you. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. The following morning, news broke that Caroline and David's bank accounts had been wiped clean. Police were investigating possible identity theft. And the culprits were close family. Michael had vanished. So had Lacey. The police questioned everyone. Everyone except me. Because I wasn't there. But I was the target. They were going to pin it on me. Frame me. Use my name, my account numbers. My life savings. Lacey had worked in a cybersecurity firm before meeting Michael. She had the skills. The access. And Michael. Well, let's just say I'd bailed him out more than once before. But Oliver knew. Somehow he had known. He told me everything later, but not all at once. Not until it was safe. But that's another part of the story. Because what happened next? That's when things got really strange. The next morning, I sat in Mrs. Darnell's kitchen with a cup of cold coffee and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The sky outside was bruised with gray clouds. Everything felt still, like the world was holding its breath. I hadn't slept. I'd kept her curtains drawn, lights off, doors locked. I didn't know what scared me more. The thought of what almost happened, or the chilling realization that my own son might have been behind it. I stared at the text messages again, my thumb hovering over the phone. My mind raced. Should I call the police? Would they even believe me? A 73-year-old woman who ran away from dinner because her 12-year-old grandson told her to? It sounded insane. But deep down I knew one thing for sure. Oliver had saved me. He knew something dangerous. And I needed to know what it was. That's when I got a knock at the door. My heart jumped. I didn't move. Another knock. Louder this time. I crept to the peephole holding my breath. And there he was, my little hero. Oliver. His hoodie was soaked from the rain. He stood there, shivering, clutching something under his arm. I yanked the door open and pulled him inside. Oliver. Sweetheart, are you okay? How did you? He threw his arms around me. And for the first time in hours I broke. I held him so tightly I could feel his tiny heartbeat pounding against mine. I'm sorry. He whispered into my shoulder, voice cracking. I didn't know what else to do. I pulled back, cupping his face. Baby, what's going on? What did you mean last night? Why did you tell me to run? He looked around, paranoid. Then he pulled a folded piece of paper from under his hoodie and placed it on the table. It was a printed email. 2 pages. Lines of transactions, strange messages, even a few photos. One was of me sitting in my garden. Another from inside my kitchen. My heart nearly stopped. Where did you get this? I found it on Lacey's laptop. She left it open in the guest room when she was helping Dad move boxes. I saw your picture. I didn't mean to spy, Grandma, but when I clicked around I found emails. They were talking about your house, your bank accounts, something about transferring ownership. I didn't understand it all, but it felt wrong. Tears welled in my eyes. He was just a child. A child. And he had stumbled into something way over his head. And then I heard them talking last night, he whispered. When everyone was outside getting drinks. Uncle Michael said you were going to sign everything over soon. And Lacey said, she won't even see it coming. I felt like the ground beneath me cracked open. They were going to steal everything. My house. My savings. My life. And frame me or worse. But Oliver. My sweet, observant Oliver. He saw them for who they were. Does your mom know? I asked. He hesitated. She's scared. She said something feels off too. But she doesn't know everything. I didn't tell her yet. I nodded. Caroline was strong. But she'd always tried to believe the best in people. Even Michael, despite all the times he let us down. "You did the right thing, baby. I thought maybe they were going to hurt you," he said, voice breaking. And my heart shattered. He wasn't just afraid I'd be robbed. He was afraid I wouldn't survive. I dropped to my knees and hugged him again, tighter this time. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered. "You were braver than most grown-ups I know." That night I called Caroline. I told her everything. There was a long silence on the other end. Then a soft whisper. I knew something was wrong. But not like this. Not Michael. She was crying. "You and Oliver need to stay away. For now. I'll keep my eyes open. I'll record what I can. If they're still planning something, I want proof." I wanted to tell her to leave the house. To grab Hannah and run. But Caroline wasn't a runner. She was her mother's daughter. For the next week, Oliver stayed with me at Mrs. Darnell's house. We pretended it was a sleepover adventure. We made pancakes at 2 a.m., watched old cartoons under blankets, and played cards by candlelight when we were too afraid to turn on the lights. But every night, I heard him crying softly into his pillow. I just wanted things to be normal again. Caroline called 3 days later. Her voice was trembling. "They're planning something tomorrow." I overheard Lacey say, "Once she signs the new papers, it's done. Michael's bringing someone over. A notary or a lawyer, I don't know. They forged documents, Maggie. Forged. They were going to make it legal. Fake signatures. Fake contracts. Take everything." "But I recorded it," she said. "I have the audio. And I've already sent copies to my work email, my lawyer friend, even to your bank manager, Cheryl. God bless her. It's time to end this," she said. "You need to come back." I didn't sleep that night. I watched Oliver, his face finally peaceful in slumber, and thought about how easily I could have lost everything. Not just the house or the money, but him. His trust. His innocence. His safety. The next day, I walked into my own home with 2 police officers by my side. Michael was there, dressed in a suit, a notary seated at the kitchen table. Lacey turned pale the second she saw me. Caroline stood behind them, phone in hand, already recording. "Hi, Michael," I said, voice calm. He opened his mouth, closed it. "You should have known better," I said, turning to the officers. "That's the man who tried to steal from me. Took hours. Statements. Arrests. Questions. Turns out Michael was deep in gambling debt. Lacey was a tech wizard who had been helping him wipe my finances clean. They had used spyware, planted cameras, and even convinced a forged signature would stand up in court. But none of it mattered now. Because Oliver saw. Because Caroline believed. Because I trusted. And it saved me. That night, back in my own house, Oliver sat in my lap as we watched the fire flicker. "You're my little guardian angel," I whispered, kissing his forehead. He smiled. "I just couldn't lose you, Grandma." Tears slipped down my cheeks. But for the first time in days, they weren't tears of fear. They were of love. Of gratitude. Of knowing I was never really alone. The following morning, I opened my eyes in my own bed for the first time in 10 days. At first, I didn't recognize the ceiling. For a moment, I thought I was still at Mrs. Darnell's, still in hiding. Then the soft sunlight hit the curtains I'd sewn years ago, and I felt a strange combination of warmth and weight pressed down on my chest. I was home, but everything had changed. Oliver was still asleep in the guest room down the hall. I stood quietly in the doorway, watching him breathe, his chest rising and falling slowly beneath his Star Wars blanket. His cheeks were flushed pink with safety. Innocence. I thought of how close I'd come to never seeing this again. And I thanked God. I don't care who's listening. I believe in prayer. And in miracles. And in the voice of a child who saw danger before the grown-ups ever did. Later that day, Detective Barnes stopped by. A kind man, probably around my son's age, but with softer eyes and far more honesty in them. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where it all nearly happened. Where Michael had nearly stolen my life right out from under me. Barnes laid out everything. Michael had been working with a known fraud ring, people who targeted the elderly through family connections. Lacey was connected to at least 2 prior financial scams, both sealed by quiet settlements and unproven claims. Nothing ever stuck until now. They were being held without bail. A court date would be coming. I thought that hearing this would make me feel vindicated, like justice was being done. Instead, I just felt tired. "He's still my son," I murmured mostly to myself. Barnes nodded. "And he almost destroyed you." That night after dinner, I found Oliver sitting alone on the back steps. He was drawing, something he always did when his mind was full. "Whatcha working on?" I asked gently. He turned the notebook so I could see. It was me. And him. Holding hands under a big tree with our names in bold letters. Oliver and Grandma Maggie. Brave together. I had to turn away so he wouldn't see my tears. "It's not over yet, huh?" he asked, looking up at the stars. "No," I admitted. "But the worst part's behind us." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Are you mad at Uncle Michael?" I sighed. "No. I'm heartbroken." "That's not the same thing." He leaned against my side. "He used to be my hero when I was little," Oliver said. "He gave me a slingshot once and told me I was strong. He used to be your mom's hero too. Will you forgive him?" I looked at Oliver, this child who had more emotional clarity than many grown men. "I'll try," I whispered. "But I'll never forget. And I'll never let him close again." That answer seemed to settle something in him. Over the following weeks, the world began to make sense again. Caroline took time off work and stayed with me. Hannah came over more often, helping with the garden. Even David, who had always been more reserved, opened up as though the whole ordeal had shaken something in him. He and Oliver started playing chess again every Tuesday night. I'd watch from the kitchen window, smiling, as David praised every smart move Oliver made. But the wounds didn't vanish overnight. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. Every envelope with a strange return address made my stomach turn. Every knock at the door made Oliver tense beside me. Trauma lingers like a shadow. Not always visible, but always present. Then came the court summons. March 14th. I hadn't seen Michael since the night of the arrest. I didn't know what he'd say, or if he'd even look at me. I wore my Sunday best, a deep blue dress I hadn't worn in years. The one I wore to my anniversary dinner with George before he passed. I wanted to walk into that courtroom as the woman I've always been. Strong, dignified, unbroken. Oliver squeezed my hand before I left the house. "You got this, Grandma." And somehow I believed him. The courtroom was cold. Quiet. Too quiet. Michael looked tired. Older. He didn't meet my eyes. Lacey didn't speak once. When the prosecutor played the audio, Caroline's recording from that night, I closed my eyes. I couldn't bear to hear my son's voice plotting against me, like I was just a number on a spreadsheet. And yet there it was. Once she signs, it's ours. She won't know. We've got everything covered. She's just an old lady. An old lady. That's how he saw me. Not his mother. Not the woman who raised him after his father died. Not the woman who put groceries in his cabinets after his divorce. Just a barrier. A target. A name on a deed. The judge didn't need long. Guilty. Both of them. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Attempted financial abuse of an elder. Lacey got 3 years. Michael got 5 plus restitution. He never once looked my way. I thought I would cry when I heard the sentence. Instead, I felt something far more complicated: grief. Deep and silent. Not just for what he did, but for who he used to be. And for the mother I still was. Back home that night, I found Oliver waiting for me with hot cocoa and a marshmallow smiley face. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded. "I will be." He didn't ask about the sentence. Or about Michael. Instead, he handed me another drawing, this one of a shield. It had our family name in the middle, surrounded by hearts and tiny swords. "You protected us," he said proudly, "even when it hurt." I held that paper like it was made of gold. Weeks turned into months. Spring arrived. Tulips bloomed in my front yard. Oliver's laugh returned louder, brighter. He started writing stories about superheroes and detectives. One of them was about a boy named Ollie and his grandma who fought off villains with nothing but kindness and cocoa. Caroline went back to work. David smiled more. Hannah started volunteering at the local library. And me? I went back to baking. Back to walking in the mornings. Back to being Grandma Maggie but with new scars. Quiet ones. Invisible to most. Except one person. One night in June, Oliver and I were sitting on the porch watching fireflies. "Do you think people can change?" he asked. I looked up at the sky. "Yes," I said. "But they have to want it. Not everyone does." He was quiet. Then, "Do you think Uncle Michael ever loved you?" That question hit like a stone in my chest. "I think, at one point yes," I whispered. But somewhere along the way he let greed drown that love. And by the time he realized, it was too late. Oliver nodded solemnly. "I won't let that happen to me." I put my arm around him. "I know you won't." This story could have ended with loss. It could have ended with heartbreak, betrayal, even tragedy. But it didn't. Because a 12-year-old boy stood up at the dinner table and said 7 words that saved my life. "Grandma, you need to go. Now." And I trusted him. And it saved everything. 3 years later. I don't move quite as fast these days. My knees creak louder, my hair's more silver than gray now. And I can't garden for more than an hour before my back reminds me I'm not 45 anymore. But I still walk every morning. Still drink my black coffee with 2 sugars. Still leave out milk for the neighborhood cat who pretends he doesn't like me, and comes back every single night. And most mornings I still find a note waiting for me on the porch bench. Just a scrap of paper, usually folded in half, sometimes with a doodle of a rocket ship or a bird. But always signed. Love, Oliver. He's 15 now. Taller than me. Voice deeper. Smile even wider. And he still holds my hand when we walk together. Because no matter how much he grows or how heavy the world becomes, he remembers. He remembers what it meant to speak up. To protect someone he loved. To be believed. The trial ended years ago, but the echoes didn't. You don't come out of something like that without pieces missing. There are nights I still flinch when the wind slams a door shut. Times when I forget where I've put something, and my stomach knots, wondering if someone's moved it. But trauma is strange like that. It hides in the cracks of a quiet home. It lingers in the hum of a refrigerator. It speaks in your own voice sometimes, whispering doubt when you should be feeling safe. And yet, I never let it win. Because I'm still here. And because every day I look at the boy who saved me, and I remember what I'm fighting for. Oliver came to me last week with a school assignment. "We have to write about the bravest person we know," he said sheepishly. I smiled, thinking maybe he'd write about his mom. Or maybe David, who rebuilt the family with quiet strength after everything fell apart. But then he handed me his rough draft. And as I read it, I wept. She bakes pies, yes. She wears slippers with cats on them and forgets where she left her reading glasses. She laughs at her own jokes. But don't be fooled. My grandma is a warrior. When the people closest to her tried to take everything, she didn't fall apart. She stood tall. She protected us even when she was the one in danger. Even when it was her son. She trusted me when no one else would have. And that made me brave too. She's my hero. She always will be. How do you even describe that kind of love? It's not made of grand gestures. It's built in quiet rooms, whispered reassurances, cocoa after courtrooms and kisses on scraped knees. It's forged in fear but tempered in trust. Oliver made me believe again, not just in family but in intuition, in instincts, in the strength we carry even when we feel powerless. He reminded me that sometimes the most heroic act in the world is listening to a child. As for Michael, he's still in prison. He's written to me twice. The first letter was angry, full of blame. He said I turned Caroline against him, that I overreacted, that I embarrassed the family. I didn't respond. But the second letter was different. Apologetic. Measured. Older. He said he'd started therapy. That he finally saw what he'd done. that he didn't expect forgiveness but he wanted me to know he was trying. I read that one 3 times before tucking it into my drawer. I haven't written back. Not because I hate him. Not because I can't forgive. But because some bridges take time to rebuild. And some never do. And that's okay. Last Christmas we had everyone back at the house. Caroline brought the turkey. Hannah made vegan stuffing. No one ate it but we all pretended. David fixed the broken railing on the porch before I even asked. And Oliver helped me decorate the tree just like he always had. As we sat around the fire that night, warm and whole and together, I realized something. What they tried to take from me was never the house. Or the money. They tried to take my peace. My name. My voice. My story. And they failed. Because that story, our story, doesn't end in betrayal. It ends in resilience. I keep the drawing Oliver made all those years ago framed on my mantle now. The one of us under the tree, hand in hand. And beside it, a new one. Drawn last week. It's the same tree, but this time there's more people beneath it. Caroline, David, Hannah. Even the cat. And a banner above them all that says, "We are still standing." Because we are. And always will be. Grandma, you need to go. Now. Those words echo in my memory, not with fear anymore, but with pride. Because that boy, that moment, that truth, saved me, remade us, and became legend in our family, not of what almost happened but of what didn't. Because one boy had courage, and one old woman chose to listen.